And I'll go straight to introducing the panel that we have here this morning to just look at where we are as a nation. Of course, today is a day where we'd be saying or singing happy birthday to some extent after 54 years of self-rule. But then, well, is it really a happy birthday or not? But I have a panel that would like to discuss that here with us. And remember, you're welcome to participate in this conversation, especially because you are a stakeholder. And joining me in studio, we have Godfrey Osotsi to my extreme left, who is the Secretary General for ANC. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have John Kagushia, who's a governance expert. Thank you for joining us, John.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Professor Tumbo, who's a political analyst. Good morning and thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Now, first of all, let me start by wishing you all a happy Madaraka Day.
Same to you.
And hope that you're, as usual, Kenyans are said to be very positive and very happy most of the times, and I hope that is the case. However, we're going to look at where we are as a country. And let me start with you, John, on maybe your scorecard. And this is not just for Jubilee. Looking at a nation, this is a nation that is 54 years old. Where should we be? Should we be retiring?
Really? Yeah, I think it's a good coincidence that we are almost the age of retirement, although now, you know, the age of retirement has gone to 60.
It's gone up a little bit, yes.
Yeah, as a country, I can say we are largely on track, but we have many challenges. And you remember our founding fathers, when we got independence, one of the things Mzee Jomo Kenyatta said is he wanted to fight hunger, ignorance, and poverty. And the question then would be today, have we managed to fight all these problems that we have had in this country from independence? And of course, the answer would be to some extent, yes. But again, we still have a long way to go in terms of issues of hunger, as you know, in terms of issues of ignorance. At least we can celebrate that today we have a free education, primary school education, and also now we are going to what is being called the basic education, all the way from pre-primary all the way to high school. That would be a good thing for our country. But again, as a country, we have many challenges that we have to surmount as we move forward.
Okay. Godfrey, your thoughts on where we are as a country 54 years later? Are you proud of where we are?
First of all, I start by wishing all Kenyans happy Madaraka Day and say that yes, the country has made progress in various sectors, but that progress could be more. Because if you compare this country with Asian tigers, who are actually behind us in many ways in the early 70s, and now the Asian tigers are far, far much ahead of Kenya in terms of development. So if you put Kenya on that scale, then you realize that maybe a lot needed to be done. But in terms of little progress, we have made little progress.
All right, Professor Tubo, your thoughts on where we are as a country?
Congratulations to everybody on 54th Madaraka Day, including yourself.
Thank you.
I hope you age-wise utafika hapa tupite. First and foremost, we have made some progress that can't be denied. But in my view, we have spent too much time on the hardware, doing the material things, doing the physical, the visible things, which is actually become like our national obsession. The software, the character things that help you to sustain, to run the country, we have made very, very insignificant progress. For example, you will find that from the very beginning, when Mzee Kenyatta declared they will fight poverty, ignorance, and disease. Now, somehow it became fighting poverty, ignorance, and disease through construction of buildings. Now, instead of constructing moral structures, benchmarks, quality practices on which to do our business, that is the distinction between us and Singapore, for example. Singapore started by saying everybody must adhere to the code of ethics for running public affairs.
Without which there is this punitive measure.
Yes, without which you will be punished. For us, we run for the visibles. You know, I call it the Dukawala mentality, whereby if you don't have goods on the shelf, people think you have nothing to sell. So we never grew to appreciate ideas, appreciate character, appreciate decency.
So, Professor, where did we go wrong, given that our very African culture is very strong on some of these, misnomers that we have? For instance, you'd not find a word corruption in our mother tongues, and that's because the word is theft. Have we sanitized some of these bad deeds and, given them sweeter terms such that we're able to get away with them?
True, true. In fact, Mike, what happened is that during the first decade of independence, there was this problem that one channel that was taken to take care of poverty became acquisition. Now, unfortunately, the founding fathers took the position that you do what you are supposed to do, but if you pinch some of it for yourself, it's all right as well, as long as you are not caught and as long as the system runs. Now, that emanated from the fact that there was a certain attitude of self-reward, whereby some of those who had fought for independence felt that it is time materially to compensate themselves for the pains they had undergone. So in the process, the Africanness, the traditional African thinking was contaminated. And this is because those people came from teachings of Western Europe. You know, the distinct difference between, in the African society, you are anybody because you belong to a community.
Right.
But in a Western community, you are you because you are you.
Okay, let me hear from John whether you agree that we have spent so much time as a country working on the hardware and we forgot to work on the software.
It is true. We have focused quite a bit on issues that, especially if you look at the issues of production as a country, we need to have a culture whereby people understand that the only way we can be able to grow the country is through production. And then that would inform the kind of activities as a country we engage in. And then we'd come up with a culture of hard work. Because if you look at the way we do things today, you see like the betting industry is flourishing so much because at times people imagine that you can have a way of getting riches or you can be able to move ahead and get and make money without necessarily having to go through the hard work. And if you look again at the culture we have even in public service, again, it has not been the culture of proper service to the common mwananchi. And if you look at the kind of activities also that we engage in, the activities that also pay more in this country, it is not necessarily activities that should pay more. The culture of hard work, at times, it has not gained appreciation to the level that it should be. And that is why you see like the manufacturing industry. I think it's only now that it is now starting to sprout again. But by and large, the manufacturing industry has really been down in this country. And without production, without engaging in productive activities, without rewarding productive businesses, whereby we are looking at issues like farming, you know, where you can produce items and products that can be sold and can be exported. And if we are not engaging in that as a country, then we are in a situation where we are all offering services at times that do not actually add to the growth of this nation. And again, where does this issue come from? It comes from the issue of the software more than the issue of hardware. Because if you have not invested in a culture, in a country, that a culture that is going to help us to understand what we need to invest in and to understand that shortcuts do not pay, and to understand that as a country we cannot continue over-relying and over-depending so much on politics. Yeah? If we don't understand that, then we are likely to lag behind for a long time. But I think as if you look at like the young people today, I have seen even newspapers have now started coming up with agricultural products and technological advancement in agriculture columns. I've seen that is happening to happen. We're starting to have even magazines that are portraying that kind of a thing. And I see even young people who are embracing issues like agriculture, because they are now understanding that it is important to produce, other than just to engage on other issues that may not be giving us products which we can put on the shelf, that we can put in the market. Take, for example, issues of hunger, as we can see. I keep saying it's not entirely an issue of government to blame. It's an issue of a country's culture. Because, for example, when we have rain, are we all engaging in farming activities as a country? When irrigation projects have been started in areas, like I like giving an example in my village. In my village, there's pretty good coverage of irrigation water. But again, when I look at my village, are we totally independent of any other assistance from outside in terms of food? At times, the answer is no, because we find people have not necessarily embraced the productive activities. So as a country, as we celebrate Madaraka today, that is one of the messages I think need to flow in our minds. It needs to flow in our thinking, that it's not always a must that we must engage in white-collar jobs. We need to now embrace the technical colleges, for example, that are coming up, that used to be very strong in the past.
Right. Godfrey, your thoughts on where we are, and possibly we'll now delve into more specifics of why we are where we are, because looking at what I'd call the Kenyan dream, it was to address hunger, it was to address poverty and education. We'll see whether we are there, but your thoughts on why we are where we are.
Well, I want to agree with my colleague that the country has focused more on the hardware than the software. If you look at some of the software issues we are talking about issues of corruption. We are talking about issues of poor leadership. We are talking about issues of tribalism. These, in my view, are the main issues which have prevented this country to achieve things that it should achieve. If you look at corruption, a lot of wastage. If you go into government today and just do an assessment about the kind of wastage that is going on in government, it's huge, huge.
Is it even wastage or just pilfering? You know, there's a difference between wasting
stealing,
and literally just stealing and putting in your pocket.
Stealing, wastage, all those things are really retarding this country. Money that ordinarily could be used to fix other softwares like good education, paying doctors well, paying our lecturers well, is being wasted through corruption. And if you look at Singapore, for example, Singapore has grown largely because they invested in human resource. Doctors, engineers, and they put good money into them. And those people were able to develop the country to where it is. But in this country, what happens? We educate people. We spend a lot of money educating doctors, engineers, and then they all go to work outside.
Professor.
That is not productive to the country.
Thank you, Mike. In fact, I like what he has said. What I would like to expand is this, that, you know, Mahatma Gandhi once said, education without character is worthless. Now, what we are having in our country is precisely that. There are very many people going through the classroom. There are very many people having degrees. But when they qualify as professionals, these people have no moral character. This is the software I'm talking about. In other words, the man is a brilliant engineer, but is essentially a thief. The man is a brilliant administrator, but is essentially a thief. Now, without the re-engineering of our, what you might call, moral compass, without it, for us to go to the next level, Mike, we must take the trouble of re-engineering our moral compass. Now, the problem we have right now is that if you look at the Jubilee government, you look at the NASA leadership, they are all stuck in this tragedy of moral bankruptcy, whereby They are looking at the log in the other's eye, but not taking out the beam in one's eye. And what I'm thinking about is this. Is there a possibility that if Honorable Kenyatta comes back, he can find courage to re-engineer the country by saying people must earn their keep, not just to get. The getting is a reflection of our moral bankruptcy. And this is what I mean by software. You know, at the moment where we are now, I use the software and hardware expression to literally to show that where we are now, for the country to stop walking and start running, we must shift, all right? Like from the old-fashioned railway line to the electrical train.
To the electrical train.
Yes.
Godfrey, you're part of ANC and as a result part of NASA. So what is it that NASA has to offer this country that would make a difference that has not been made in 54 years?
Well, NASA is an excellent idea. We
don't run short of excellent ideas.
Yes.
We have brilliant, excellent ideas. What we need is a shift. We need a change.
Yes, and that's the shift NASA is going to bring. If you look at the coalition agreement that was signed by the 5 parties, clearly states issues of corruption, for example, that any leader within the NASA government who will be involved in corruption will have to leave office. 2, all NASA leaders who will serve in government will be required to declare their wealth.
Let me stop you right there because we already have a template that we can work with before you even get into government, if you do get into government. The devolved governments, county governments, do have leadership under NASA. They have not declared their wealth. They have not asked those who've been implicated with corruption to leave. So what's going to change?
Well, one is that NASA is not in government. It is Jubilee which is in government. We are seeking to get into government.
But we do have county governments that are under the leadership of NASA.
Yes, but those county governments are in some way answerable to the national government. And we have said this talk about NASA governors have been involved in this. If any of our governors has been involved in corruption, we have a government. They should be arrested and be taken in, just like any other Kenyan who breaks the law. So the whole agenda of saying that the NASA governors are involved in corruption, I think is a narrative that we are saying that the Jubilee government is actually confessing that it has not performed on the matter of dealing with corruption. Because if I know Governor A or B is involved in corruption, and I'm the president, and I'm the minister in charge of that, I need to take action.
So you sincerely believe none of them have been involved in anything that is questionable?
Well, until issues are brought up in court and they are proven to be guilty, I wouldn't want to speculate.
John?
Yeah, I think there lies our problem as a country. Exactly what Godfrey has expressed. Because if you look at our country today, we really can't say that now we have this government and this opposition. We are kind of all of us now in government. Because we have the national government, then we have the county governments. You see, Professor has said that as a country, we have that issue of moral bankruptcy. It is not in question. That really is one of the challenges that we have to encounter. We have to fight as a country. Now, this is not a preserve of one coalition of government. Because remember, these coalitions, today they have these members, tomorrow they have these other members. And it's very difficult to differentiate who is who in these coalitions because actually the coalitions belong to the same leadership, actually. It is not very sincere then to say that the county governments report to the national government and hence the national government ought to take the responsibility for the corruption and problems that are encountered in the county governments. I believe that we need to accept as a country so that then we can probably get help. You know, the problem is if you don't know that you have a problem, or if you know you have a problem and you deny that you have a problem, then you stay in that state of denial, then you are not likely to get help. But once you accept, yes, as a nation, we must come to a point and say enough is enough. we now need to change. And I like what he said, that we hope that, let's say, for example, if Uhuru Kenyatta maybe took government in August, and this is his last term, we hope then he can give this country a gift by re-engineering the state and saying, now this is the direction we are going to get to. Otherwise, if you look at the way it has been, governor in ODM is found in corruption. Remember the Kilifi issue? The leader of opposition runs to shield and says, at least as we have accepted. But again, action, nothing.
No action.
Yeah.
Professor.
I was going to say that we need to move this debate beyond finger pointing. Because finger pointing is partly part of the reason why we have remained. You know, in the uniform services, you are very busy. When you are in parade, you are on the same spot, but you are participating in the drill. Just like when you are in a treadmill. So you are standing on the same
You're the same spot, but sweating.
But you are sweating. You know, we are in that dilemma. My proposal, Mike, is this, that the opposition and the government, whether during the campaign or during outside the campaign, we should develop certain beacons that should be inviolable. In other words, there are certain things the two of them should be able to agree that in the national interest, whoever is in power should not violate 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is, in my opinion, a charter of goodwill governance, whereby you say, look, the constitution we know, the rules we know, but what is lacking is political goodwill to push this thing forward. So if they can generate certain pillars of conduct when you are in government, for example, look at what has happened in South Korea. The president, through allowing other people, or the ex-president, other people to manipulate, you know, state governance procedures in order to access resources, she was pushed out of office. In other words, do not convert state assets into private property for private gain. Now, if we make that clear and we make our code of conduct, we make it one of the beacons of our code of conduct, then we will move from saying, but Mike, you did this, but also you did this. We will be saying, the rule is clear. You break this, the consequences are this, and you become unfit to run our country. Now, this must be accompanied by public education, whereby the public is being told that the way your resources are going to be spent is going to be guided by these principles. Right now, one of our major challenges, which is a reflection of our moral bankruptcy, is our unwillingness to obey the rules that we make. You know, every time we have a problem, we suggest that let us make fresh legislation. Another rule. So as a result, we have gone round and round and round. And in this particular one, I don't think it is Jubilee or NASA to blame. It is our collective national illness.
Okay. Now, for us to move from just finger pointing, because you've rightly put it, it is a waste of energy. We use a lot of energy finger pointing and blaming each other. And NASA will say Jubilee, Jubilee will say not, and it's all over. But if we look at our track record, 54 years on, we have struggled with some of these things. If today Kenya cannot feed itself, we have to bring in maize from Mexico, there is a big problem. Godfrey, what is, and you see the problem that we may have as a country is we are always dealing with top level of the problem. We never go to the root. What is the root of our problem?
Well, the root of our problem is, as Professor said, is one, there is no political goodwill. For example...
So is that as a result of Kenyans and our leaders just being selfish? Or what is it that is keeping the goodwill away from?
To a large extent. Let me give you an example. We have had a lot of problems in this country, historically. And I'm happy the president is going to conduct Madaraka Day celebration in Nyeri. There is the issue of the TJRC report, which clearly documents the issues that this country has gone, the problems that this country has gone through. Since independent. It is very basic thing for the government to start the implementation process of the TJRC report. And to a large extent, if that report is implemented, a lot of our challenges will be sorted out. And that's why I say doing Madaraka Day in Nyeri is very significant for us as the NASA team. And that is why our principals are attending. That a lot of challenges which were noted in the TJRC report affected the residents of Nyeri County. You remember Nyeri in independent struggle played a big role in delivering the independence to this country. So we are asking the government or our leaders of this country, let us start by implementing the TJRC report. Those basic things that you don't need rocket science to do. And that is leadership. That's why I'm talking about this country lacks good leadership. This country lacks political goodwill.
Okay,
because
John,
if we have political goodwill, we would be in the ranks of Singapore. Singapore has made progress largely because of
We talk of political goodwill, but sometimes it's good to literally put a finger on something. Is it just poor leadership? Is it just greed that we have? Is it that as Kenyans we have no moral compass such that regardless of which leader we put there, because don't forget, 80% of our legislators do not go back to government. They do not go back to... So where is our root problem?
As we are looking at the root problem, you also need to understand that when we started this debate, we said as a country we are somewhere. We are not completely lost, because it's good when you are also talking to kind of give hope, because indeed there is hope as a country. One of the root problems that we have had, of course, is lack of proper planning right from the word go. And even when we have planned, lack of commitment to follow through those plans. And even when we want to follow those plans, some people have taken advantage of government and public resources for their own individual and personal benefit. That has been one of the challenges that we have had right from the independence. And so then the problem we find ourselves in today is not a problem of the Kibaki government, is not a problem of Uhuru's government, is not a problem of the Moi's government. It's a problem that we have refused or have failed to take action on for a long period of time. Now, as a country, I believe when we got Vision 2030 in place, that was one of the ways that came to address some of the challenges that we have had. And the other issue, and that maybe, as Professor would want to put it, probably that is also addressing the issue of the hardware. Where do we want to go as a country, by and large? Then the issue of the Constitution came on board in 2010. Again, that now came to probably address the issues of software. And if you look at Chapter 6, it addresses the issues that Professor has raised so that we can now stop finger pointing. But then, as a country, are we also committed to follow through Chapter 6 of the Constitution? Because it is clear we have principles of good governance very well entrenched in the Constitution. We have clear good governance requirements which have been well laid out in that Constitution, Chapter 6, look at it. And we have even qualifications of our national leaders. And remember, as we are saying this, the whole of last week until now, we have been discussing about the issue of, are we going to bar rogue politicians from vying? And again, you look at it, what time are we talking about that? It's something that we really would have talked about right from the word go. And I believe even from August, we then need to start asking ourselves, what are the leaders we are going to have in 2022? And then let's take action from August 2017, not in June 2022. Yeah, so as a country, we now have a kind of a framework in place. What needs to be done is to ensure that we follow through and ensure that action is taken. Now then, as Kenyans, we also need to support that kind of approach. We need to understand this framework. And that is why, again, public education will also be very, very important.
Okay. Mike, thank you very much. My colleague has articulated it very well. I want to extend it further. One of the major constraints in our political culture is business interest. In Kenya, election to a political office is election to a trading station. So the political business is a commercial business. As a result, when you elect a very clean lawyer, he reaches there he finds that the people who supported him all have commercial interests in all the projects going on. So when you are asking him to re-engineer the system so that it can be honest, it can be meritocratic, these supporters tell him, "Well, but we brought you here. How can you turn around on us and tell us that we have no business?" So one of the historical things we need to go back to is that, go back to that Ndegwa report of 1965, which allowed civil servants to engage freely in business. And as a result, what he forgot to take care of was the more power you have, the more leverage you have on business deals. Now, if that needs to, in my view, that needs to be relooked at with a view to tidying it up and cleaning it. And they're saying, for example, if you are a president, all right, your friends, your business associates, your family may not engage, all right, in irregular business practices while you are in power. Now, if we don't go back and clean up that thing, now I come to the next part. It is unlikely that we'll go back there, because now the entrenched business interests are the ones running the economy through that method. So my view is this: what you need is basically a political outsider who becomes a benevolent dictator, just to allow those things to change. I'm saying something very, very big, because these guys who are running the system now are all drunk with it.
Okay. I'll come back to you, but we'd like to release our home channel there. Is a benevolent dictator what Kenya needs right now? That's the conversation we're having right here. On KTN News, we continue with this conversation. For those of us on KTN Home, it's time for Life and Style. So we'll say goodbye and wish you a happy Madaraka Day. But for those of us on KTN News, continue with this conversation on State of the Nation. If you are on KTN Home and would like to continue with us, and also remember, you're welcome to participate, then switch over to KTN News. Otherwise, KTN Home, goodbye. John, do we need a benevolent dictator? Have we reached that point where maybe we're not able to manage our own freedom? Or we've become too free?
I don't know whether I want to use such a radical term. A professor has used a very, very heavy terminology. And if you look at it, really, he has good reasons, because, you know, where we have...
and let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
Is that maybe what we need? Because if you look at even the list of 20 that was brought forward, albeit it might be too late, and we can scuttle around the real issues. But the truth of the matter is, we seem to have a legal and a justice system that they're able to manipulate and use, such that you need somebody who will put their foot down. Look at what the president said during his address when they were dealing with corruption. He said, look, my hands are tied, because we have a judicial system. When they take, I've done what I can. So somehow, do we need somebody who will just...
One of the things I would want to point out that we need to do is to relook at the whole issue of reward. Are we rewarding the wrong things in this country? As I said before, are we rewarding the productive activities? And, or rather, are we rewarding the non-productive activities instead of doing the vice versa?
The answer is yes.
And of course, the answer is yes. Look at our politicians. They have set the bar so high, not in production, but in what they take home, consumption. So every other person strives and aspires then to get to that level. So if you're not going to vie as an MCA, and you have seen the number of MCAs, people who have left productive industry to go and vie as MCAs, reason to be able to...
more productive than
you know, in terms of the take home. You get? So, and if you're not going to vie as an MCA, an MP, a governor, as a president, if you're not going to vie as that, you're probably in the medical field, you want to earn more. Reason being, you want to earn as much as an MCA or even more than an MCA. So the bar has been set very high on that side, on the non-productive activities in the country, such that then it lures most of even young people into that line. So what needs to be done is we need to cut this whole thing again, and we need to rethink the whole process of where we are going to put more reward in. Let us put instead, can you imagine a politician in Kenya not paying taxes? And you know, until we made so much noise the other day is when the politicians started being taxed. But to what level? Only to some, yeah? It's not everything that is still taxed. So, but someone who is disabled does not get as much tax exempt as a politician. You know, then if you look at the person who is doing business, they do not also get as much tax exemptions. They actually pay so much tax. And also if you are also working in the lower cadres. So the politicians will need to start, I mean, we need to start as Kenyans and slash the whole issue of how much we pay the politicians. That's a completely non-productive activity in Kenya. And then we start lowering the bar in terms of people who just want to go and exploit the country in that level. So that then we redirect our energies in a different place. And then probably that's what Professor is then saying, we need someone who can be a benevolent dictator. But would you be a benevolent dictator in Kenya under the new and current order, the constitutional order? It would be difficult because our constitutional order in Kenya, as you know it, it has been praised as the most progressive worldwide. It gives us so much freedom. And there lies again our problems in the freedoms that we have. And we think we have freedoms even to, to engage in whatever that we would want to engage in, even when it is not very helpful to our economy.
All right.
Yeah.
Godfrey, are we unable to manage our freedom? Here we are 54 years later, and it's easy for you right now, maybe because you're in NASA, to say Jubilee and all that. But if we take the telescope a little bit further, this is not a problem that is just 5-year-old. It is 54 years old.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we are able to manage our freedom because we have demonstrated before that we can manage our freedom. But as my colleague has said, you know, the starting point is that we have a software called the Constitution. Our Constitution is one of the best in the world. So what it takes for a leader to pick that Constitution and implement it. For example, Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya. If the Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya is properly implemented, a lot of these challenges we are having, corruption, moral issues in leadership, will be addressed.
But you see, the challenge comes in because Chapter 6 was put there because it needed to be there, simply because there seemed to be a problem. But now it seems even with Chapter 6, we really still have not come out of that quagmire.
Just to finish, Professor talked about a benevolent president, leader. Maybe not. What we need is a strong leader who will pick the Constitution and implement Chapter 6. We also need to look at this country as a business. Yeah? We look at this country as a business, with the president as the CEO of this country, and ask ourselves, what is our strategic plan? President Kibaki did well by having Vision 2030, which actually laid the framework or things that this country needed to do. But unfortunately, when the Jubilee government came to power, somehow they have disregarded the Vision 2030, and they are just doing things without a plan. We are saying as NASA, when we come to power, we'll continue to implement the issues that have been identified in Vision 2030, so that this country has a clear path where we are going to. Otherwise, we cannot continue running this country the way it is going. Without a plan, without an agenda, we are just doing things. We are talking about SGR. Yes, it's a good thing. But the bigger issue is at what cost? The other day we saw the president signing loan documents for the extension of the SGR to Naivasha. But at what cost? Over 320 billion shillings. A distance of 120 kilometers. And you are saying you want to construct SGR at a cost of 320 billion shillings. What does that mean? It means we are going to spend about 3 billion shillings per kilometer. So when the opposition raises these issues, we are raising these issues for the benefit of this country, for the growth and the future of this country.
All right, Professor.
I think we have got challenges at several levels, Mike. The first one is the issue of the Constitution. You see, we keep referring this constitution every day, everywhere, every time. The truth is, that is the letter of the constitution. What is the spirit of the constitution? The spirit of the constitution is that it must be interpreted to benefit 45 million people. The interpretation right now is that it is interpreted to benefit a select few. Whether they are in NASA or in Jubilee, I don't care, but they're still a minority. Two, for example, when Chapter 6 went to Parliament and they messed up with it in order to accommodate themselves, if President Kenyatta had demonstrated genuine public interest-centered political qualities, he would have sent that thing back to Parliament. He says the changes you have made are only serving Parliament. Why don't you make it so that they serve the public? All right? He signed it, which means he was in collusion with the Parliament in protecting the minority, despite what he says in public. That is the thing I would like to query. Secondly, this issue about NASA and their people, the truth is both sides are full of toxins, poisons, political poisons. When you want to make the person vomit so that he can clean the inside, they keep saying no, he'll be treated at home. Tumpatia dawa hospitali, atatapika apone, but he'll be very ill after that. They say, ngoja tumchukue nyumbani, we treat. So what is our problem, Mike, is the thinking. The thinking. What needs to be done? We need to harmonize the way we think and the way we feel. Our country at the moment has no feelings for you if you are not a thief. No. For example, let me finish. For example, you hear that a governor has abused resources of his county. When he's asking for office, people will say, but he has so much dough, will you manage him? Instead of asking, where did he get this dough? When the other day, he was a man living in abject poverty.
Very humble.
So the interrogative component of our national psyche is absolutely absent.
Okay. I think as we're winding up, it is good to finish on a positive note. And possibly, John, some of the things that we can highlight. It's not all doom and gloom. We certainly have certain areas that Kenya has even led in East Africa and in championing some of those things. So maybe some of the highlights of what Kenya has gained so far.
Yeah, Kenya is a leading light in this region. And it is a positive thing that even my friend Godfrey here will appreciate. I'm happy he's appreciating the issue of the Madaraka Day being in Nyeri today. I'm happy he's appreciating that. It was in Nakuru and Machakos also. And I'm very happy, by the way, Mike, that Raila Odinga will be going to Nyeri. I think the last time we were here, last Thursday, we mentioned that, and we were saying that last time he went to Nyeri, people celebrated him and they were happy. I think that is where we need to go also when it comes to the issues of national healing. Then if you look at the country, we are growing at almost 6% now. And by the way, with the implementation now of SGR, we are likely to gain almost a whole 1% growth in our GDP. So we are likely to shift very fast to 7%, by the way. So again, that's a positive thing, whereby we are growing at 6-point-something% going there now, as compared to other nations around Africa and in the world. We are quite ahead, by the way. Our growth is faster, and that's why we have also become an investment hub. There is a lot of FDI, foreign direct investments in Kenya. If you look at our president, when he shared the podium with the powerful men of this world in the G7, again, it gave us a lot of pride as a country that Kenya can actually be recognized to be the one to represent Africa in the global scene. And from there, we saw the president also getting another invitation to go and sit again in G20 in July. Again, that is another feather that we have added as a country. And I remember when President Obama came in Kenya, he told the opposition that you must be able to support your president, And so I think it's good to give credit where it is due. It is for us, all of us as a country. It is not for Uhuru to just enjoy that glamour. It's for us. It's a moment of pride as a country.
For all of us as a country.
For all of us as a country.
All right. Let me take a call from Kenneth Kipsang, who is calling from, I believe, the coastal region. Kenneth, right to your question or your comment.
Okay, it's my comment.
Go ahead. Kenneth Kipsang, you can go ahead.
Okay, I just want to comment on what you are going on through. I want to say that for us to move forward, we need to put aside the alignments that we have concerning politics. That is why whenever we have any issue raised in the parliament, touching the member of parliament, you realize that the two coalitions, that is the opposition as well as the government, they normally come together. When it is an issue to do with maybe increment in terms of payments for the member of parliament, they support each other. But any issue touching the citizens, they disagree. So you realize that both the opposition, that is the NASA team, the Jubilee, have a problem in terms of leadership for us to move forward.
Very much, Kenneth Kipsang. Yes, Professor, as you give us maybe your closing comments.
Yes, my closing comments are: we need positive bipartisanship, partnership, because if you look at the Jubilee, you look at NASA, there are certain things that they must agree they do together for the nation and not for themselves. That bipartisan arrangements whereby you say, for example, this is in Kenya's interest, this is in Wanjiko's interest, whether I'm in Jubilee or I'm in this I must forego. The biggest thing I would like to close with is this: we are totally incapable, particularly people in leadership, of making sacrifice. Sacrifice, whereby you sacrifice for the benefit of the country. By benefit of the country, it means for the public good. Sacrifice of the public good is the thing that is missing in this whole thing. And it is by partisan arrangements that it can be defined, identified, and mainstream.
All right. Godfrey, your closing comments.
Well, mine is to say that NASA is about the unity of Kenyans. And that is why today our principals are attending the Madaraka celebration in Nyeri. We know Jubilee will try and play politics, but
so will NASA. Are you telling us NASA will not play politics?
No, this is a national celebration. We want a message of hope to Kenyans, and not a message of competition between Jubilee and NASA. So for us, we are participating in the Madaraka celebration in Nyeri to demonstrate to Kenyans that NASA is about the unity of all Kenyans, regardless of your tribe, regardless of the region you come from. We are all Kenyans.
All right.
And we need to move forward as Kenyans.
All right, let's take a call from Dixon Oluoch, calling from Kisumu. Good morning, Dixon. Kericho, sorry. Morning. Dixon Oluoch from Kericho.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, Mike, I have to say something small.
Yes, go ahead.
Our country, Kenya, we've sunk that low, Mike. All the 54 years we've been spending building the country, and we've not built the nation, such that we don't have values. Kenya, we lack values. Where we lack leaders to show us. Mike, just by mentioning somebody's second name, even if you qualify to do something in Kenya, you can be left out. Tribalism has eaten this country, that even our outside colleagues like President Magufuli came to Kenya and told us that Kenya, you are good people, you are excellent, but what is tribalism.
Okay.
Mike, just give watch. 5 years to come, we are being told that Kenya is the pillar in the East African region. But watch 5 years, you will see where Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Rwanda is. Just because they've shunned the issue of tribalism.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dixon Oluoch. And let's also now just get closing comments from John Kagushia as we wind up.
Yeah, servant leadership is what we require. And there is one particular politician who really used to insist on that. servant leadership, and he would say all the times, and he's a senior politician in Kenya. I don't know what really happened to him, because I expected to see him do a little bit more. But as a country, we need to look at leadership as whereby we are going to serve this country. And Mike, there is a group of young people I know somewhere where they are coming up with the thinking of patriotism, and they are saying, we want every leader now to sit down and sign a declaration that I am a patriotic Kenyan, that when I get into leadership, I will uphold this level of principles and these values that the caller is alluding to. So we need servant leadership in Kenya, and it is not just at the top, but even at the lower levels of leadership, even in the church, even in schools, even in chamas, everywhere. We need people to become servant leaders, and then we change our attitude, our culture, and then we improve our value system as a country.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Professor Tumbo, John Kagushia, and Godfrey Osotsi for joining us this morning on State of the Nation. To you who are watching, thank you also for keeping us company. But do stay with us. We've still got Morning Express. And today being Madaraka Day, we're going to be crossing over to Nyeri in just a bit to find out what the preparations are so far from Murimi Mwangi. Also speaking to residents of Nyeri to find out their expectations of Madaraka Day being held in their county.